Hey, Plain Talk listeners, do you have a question, comment, or something you want us to discuss on the show?
We want to hear from you.
Leave a voicemail or send a text to 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. Now let's get back to today's episode.
You'd expect to see the North Dakota oil and natural gas industry working at wells and processing facilities. What you might not know is our oil and gas industry also works to build roads, provide school funding, and even protect us from flooding by creating nearly 50,000 jobs statewide and generating billions of tax dollars annually to support our infrastructure, our great outdoors, and our schools. North Dakota Petroleum Foundation, advancing the possibilities.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Hoeven.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk. Happy to be with you. And it's going to be a little bit confusing on today's show because we have two Scotts with us. We have Senator Scott Meyer, who I guess we'll call Senator Meyer, or call him Scott M, like we did in elementary school. And we have Scott Davis, who is a former Commissioner of Indian Affairs for the state of North Dakota under, God, was it three governors, Scott?
Three of them, Rob. Yep, three of them. Yep.
Three of them, yeah, three governors. Who now currently continues to work on Native American, various Native American issues as a consultant in the state of North Dakota. And we brought them on, Chad, because I wanted to talk to both of them. There's been some, obviously, I mean, gambling is just a big topic in North Dakota right now. We have the question about sports betting. We have charitable gaming, which has exploded. And I think there's some good debates to have about what are the appropriate guardrails there. And now we have another issue where, not an issue, but we have another debate, policy question about the Turtle Mountain Tribe. Obviously, are a sovereign. They have sovereignty, and so they have gambling on their land in their jurisdiction. But they would like to come off their jurisdiction and operate a gambling concern near the city of Grand Forks. We recently had a debate, and during that debate, had some really pretty offensive comments. And I know Senator Diane Larsen from Bismarck has since apologized for those comments. But making some remarks that, you know, maybe the Turtle Mountains venture was being backed by cartels, I think was the word that she used. Really unfortunate. That bill, Senate Bill 23, I had it right in front of me. Senate Bill 2376, is that right, Senator?
That's correct.
Yeah, Senate Bill 2376, it was defeated, but I have a feeling, and Scott M, we'll start with you, about, I feel like that issue's not closed.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob and Chad, for having us here to have a little conversation about 2376. So just like in this legislature, nothing's officially dead until we sign, die in the end of April. We feel like there's still a story to be told on this project, and we want to have another opportunity. So what's happened since...
Well, let's define what the bill is first. What does it do?
Yeah.
Turtle Mountain wants to build a casino resort attraction near Grand Forks. What does this bill do with regard to that?
This bill is quite simple, actually, Rob. It's just enabling language. So what it takes is that Turtle Mountain Compact that you see in the Century Code that states Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa in Rolette County, and it now adds in, the original bill said Grand Forks County. We realized that may be a little too broad. Some people had some issue with it, so we narrowed the scope down to that quarter section of land. And while I don't believe that, because it is specifically for Turtle Mountain, I don't think they would open a competing casino right down the block. But they said, fine, I listened to it, and we made it a narrower scope. There's no appropriation to this, and it doesn't approve a casino by any stretch. It just says that this is now a part of that compact. They still have to go back to the governor and rewrite a new compact if this was going to go forward. And beyond that, they got to go to Washington, D.C., to the interior, and they have to prove that there's a historical lineage to the land that they're on. And that's what they've said. They've proven that they have that, or at least I've been told that that is historical tribal land when the Pembina Band of Chippewa were in Grand Forks County. They'd signed treaties there and all these things. So really all it is a pretty simple bill, just enabling language. The state has no other funds or anything going into it.
Scott Davis, I think some of the actual policy got lost after the floor debate and Senator Larsen's really unfortunate comments. I think one of the things reading the press that really was disturbing about her comments, it doesn't sound like she just said them on the floor. She also was saying it in the hallway to people. The question that she asked and suggested cartels were funding this thing was answered by the chairman in committee, that this, like so many other projects, are funded by private banks. Can you talk? I mean, again, I think we're losing sight of the policy, but Senator Larsen's comments were offensive to a lot of people. Kudos to Senator Roars and others for standing up and shouting them down. But you've been up at this legislature for a long time, and I think one of the quotes in the paper was, "You give people a lot of grace, but it was hard to give Senator Larsen grace on this one." Can you just talk about what you felt and that kind of thing, Scott Davis?
Yeah. Thanks, Chad. And Rob, thank you guys for having me on today. Yeah, this subject kind of hits home for me, for two reasons. One, being from the Turtle Mountains and Standing Rock. Those are my homes. I love them dearly. I just spent the whole day up in Belcourt yesterday with tribal council, talking a little bit about this with our schools and our tribal colleges. So, but yeah, as we process this bill from start to finish, this is nothing new. That the city of Grand Forks and Senator Meyer knows this. This is nothing new that has been discussed between the city of Grand Forks and the tribe. It's a partnership. So when I got involved in it, doing my thing as a lobbyist, my ninth session now, 18 years of doing this, right? I've seen a lot, been through a lot. I've seen the, I'll say, borderline prejudice, discrimination against some of our bills, just because they're tribal bills, I'll say. But like you said, Chad, I've always given it the benefit of the doubt. So as we process in this bill, we're doing our thing. We work hard like everybody else, and comments were made. I know when it came out of committee with the do not pass, I said, hey, can we table this until the city of Grand Forks comes down? Because the city of Grand Forks, the mayor, the business leaders, all those people weren't afforded enough time to lobby, because of distance and scheduling. So I just said, to be fair, it's one thing for us as tribes to lobby, but this is a partnership. So can you give us time to give them time to get down here and say their piece? So that wasn't afforded. And I know Scott can talk a little bit about that, which developed into a more heated discussion. I wasn't there on that, but it got emotional. For some reason, it just got a little emotional for the senator. And I'm like scratching my head. Why is somebody so animated against our bill? It's one thing, you may not like my bill, I don't like your bill, but it doesn't give me the reason to maybe be a little over the top on comments, certainly on the floor or in the hallways. I was there when she said that, and I was appalled. I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor. Then I got very angry, and I had to walk away, regroup myself. And I talked to our leadership, our GOP leader, talked to the Senate leader. I said, hey, this ain't right. This is not right. And I've always said this from every session that I've been involved with this. Treat us fair. That's all we ask for. I'm going to work hard. And I know what good policy is. I know when it's not. I just know that game. I know how this works. I'm doing policy for a long time. So I got to make sure my P's and Q's are right. My T's and I's are dotted and crossed before I bring a bill. So this is a good bill, like Senator said, and making those comments, it really got offensive to me. And it takes me a long time to get there, but I was upset. I still haven't heard the apology to my council, to my tribal leaders at all, written otherwise, because I was with them yesterday. And it's just unfortunate that we got to go through this during session again.
Well, it's patently offensive, the idea that our friends and neighbors from Turtle Mountain would be working with cartels or criminal elements to do something. Casino's just a big part of the tribe's economy. I mean, right? I mean, it's
Well, Rob, let me stop you there. Tribal casinos across America are the most highly regulated federally.
Yeah.
In America.
Well, I was gonna make that
yeah.
point. Like keeping when we're doing legal gambling, that's when we're working with the Chamber of Commerce crowd, right? That's when we're working with people who operate out in the sunlight. That's one of the benefits of allowing legal gambling is you're not creating a market for cartels. So
That was my point, Rob. That was our
Yeah.
point 6, 7, 8 years ago about
Yeah.
e-tab machines. We're waving our hands. Hey, guys, you're being duped. You're being duped. You want to know about gaming? Look at us. We'll teach you how to do gaming correctly and effectively and legally and without any this illegalism that's going on. And nobody wanted to listen.
Well, let
Instead,
me
they doubled down on us, and now you have this explosion of e-tabs and so forth. And like we told you so. But it's those moments in time during these processes where, let's not listen to them. What do they know? They just kind of brushes to the side, and that frustrates me because I've been doing this a long time. I got an education, I got a master's degree, on and on. I'm kind of even Steven with everybody who has an education.
Yeah.
I've been around, and for you to
Well-
dismiss me and dismiss our cases about gambling, it's like, my God, now look what you're in a big pickle here.
Well, it's offensive on a cultural level. It's offensive on a professional level that somebody
Yes.
with your level
Yes.
of service to our state, again under multiple governors and elsewhere, would be lumped in like that. Let's focusing on the policy though, and I don't know which one of you Scots is the best one to answer this. But one thing that sometimes gives me pause about this is again, it's the jurisdictional thing, and acknowledging obviously that this land long before my people came here, your people were here. I don't distribute any of that, but as a matter of law today, there are jurisdictional boundaries. Casinos on the reservation, great. That's your space. That's your people. Off the reservation, now we're talking about something else. And I understand there's other hoops, but I guess that's one thing that gives me pause is, are we setting up, if Chad and I wanted to get together and start a casino near Grand Forks, we wouldn't be allowed to because that's illegal for us.
Well, we could set up a publicly spirited organization and do e-tabs in a local bar.
I guess we could do that. But I guess, to me, that's the one thing is I kind of don't like, if we're going to allow gambling, I kind of feel like we should just allow gambling for everybody. And maybe that's not fair to you, Scott. You guys are just trying to play by the rules, but you understand what I mean? That's something maybe Scott M. Maybe that's for you.
No, I understand where you're going here, Rob. And what has to happen though is you have to have buy-in not only from your city and your county and the tribe and the state and the DC. So there's a lot of levels of scrutiny that this has to go through, including getting a community host agreement in place where they are working with they want to work with our charities to make sure they're held harmless. They want to work with our law enforcement. What happens if there's a situation on site? Whose jurisdiction is that? Is that the county sheriff? Is that this local, or do you have security? So those are those aspects that get worked through this process. But this has been something that's been talked about for over 20 years in the Grand Forks community. So sometimes it had fallen apart because they didn't have full buy-in by the city council, and then they fell apart there. Even this bill that was presented to me to put in and introduce, there was a hearing by both the city council and the county commission the same week before my hearing. Now, if one of those entities would have said, "Hey, we're out," I would have withdrawn the bill. He said, "Let's go. That's fine. We're out of here." But there is a lot of steps that need to happen. Basically, though, the state level this is a what I consider a local control issue, and we are just giving the enabling language. I also look at it as a property rights. We are a predominantly conservative legislature, and a lot of times we hear on the floor about property rights. Okay, well, they bought the land. There was one, again, Corey Wenzel, the publisher from the Grand Forks Herald, reached out to me after that floor debate, and he counted 4 lies. One of them being that we gave the land to Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. That is untrue. They bought it just like anyone else could and made a fair offer, fair market assessment, and bought the land. So, it's just, there's these steps. And I think if our community believes that this project fits in their planning and zoning and they're approving of it, I have a hard time as a state senator telling them no. And I try to think about it even as, other industries, whether it's a fertilizer plant, whether it's a Fargo flood diversion, those types of things, not going to help my community, but that's some things we want to, again, let them make some of those decisions. If they're good with it, let's go. And the biggest thing too, I like to remind folks is this: not a dollar coming from the state, not one. So
So
it's an
Scott
important
Davis,
aspect.
I have a question. I was up in Belcourt about a month ago and had dinner, had a great steak at the casino there. One of the best steaks I've had in a long time. But there's some really cool stuff going on up there with the trampoline park and water park and all kinds of things going on.
By the way, my family, we are making a trip up to that water park, by the way.
Yeah,
It looks
yeah,
fantastic.
there you go.
Yeah,
So
but
my question,
we saw a brochure for it at the state. I'm full on tourism department for Belcourt right now, but that water park looks cool as hell and we're going to it.
so Rob, you should also know Evan was with us when we were up in Belcourt for this dinner, and we will be going at some point as well, based on what we saw up there. But my question for you, Scott Davis, is all these great things are happening up at Turtle Mountain. Why does the tribe want to do this? What is the incentive? Is it economic development? Is it, this is a sort of a big change for this model. So what's the incentive for the tribe to want to do this?
Yeah, good question, Chad. And yeah, the water park is nice up there. My boy's birthday today, but he too wants to swim, but we'll be swimming in Bismarck today. But yeah, but it's a business venture. So in the world of tribal economics, tribal economic development, tribes are always looking to diverse their economy, not just with gaming, but other things. You see that a lot, energy, as you see with MHA, on and on. This is no different. So when they're looking for partners, whether it's local, regional, or nationwide, here comes Grand Forks. Hey, that discussion, obviously went very well about a partnership and a joint venture in the business. And so to Senator Meyer's point, this would have never been on the table had the city and the county and the local leaders endorsed it. That's the kicker for me on this, because I know there's a lot of layers to this process, as Senator Meyer did that, and I counseled my counsel on those processes too. So, but it's a way for our tribe to diverse its economy, to create more jobs, create some wealth, create some more money that goes back to social services, our veterans, our youth groups, for infrastructure, for our roads. I mean, right now, all the federal cuts that are happening. It's tough funding the country right now. But to keep our infrastructure up and flowing, our educational systems, and like I said, I was met with the tribal college yesterday, the schools. A lot of those casino dollars go right to the schools for services. Elders, my mom and dad. I lost my dad here a couple months ago. They got Meals on Wheels. Those meals for my parents, things like that. Those are all casino dollars that go to that. And school clothes and so forth too. So I've always looked at this as a business venture, but in case it's involved in casino. But those lands are historically ours through the 10-cent treaty, the PEMNA agreement back in the day. So if you want to Google those treaties, those are historical lands of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. So
Yeah, and just to interject, Scott M referred to the fact that this has been an ongoing, for decades, where Turtle Mountain has been working on this. So I don't want to suggest that it's only motivated by recent events, but I got to think that the rise of charitable gaming has to have taken a dent, has to have put a dent in, especially the legalization of e-tabs, and now charitable gaming has become a multi-billion-dollar industry in North Dakota right now, where it wasn't anywhere close to that. That has to have taken a bite out of your guys' pie. Is some of this a response to that?
Big time. You're absolutely right, Rob. And again, 6 to 7 years ago, we were testifying on just that. One, you're being duped. This is just wide open, Wild West, casino machines coming to the cities. They're unregulated. They're unregulated machines. If you want to get real about crime and activity, we mentioned that. You can't the bad guy, the drug dealer, as an example, can't clean his drug money in our casinos. From my knowledge, you still can do that in these ETAB processes too, because they're not regulated. Fast forward now, here the last couple sessions, I give credit to the Senate side in particular, Senator Meyer's body, and also Drew Rickley for really pumping the brakes on this. Like, hey, time out here. Where's all this money going? Deb Daniel up in the AG's office, she's been magnificent, a rock star of really being transparent of where these monies are going. So if you just, it's open record, you'll see where these charities are profiting millions by millions. And I'm all for the hockey clubs, the fire clubs, the veterans clubs, no different on the reservation, no different. That's where those funds should go to. But in the area of millions upon millions, it gets a little, it's a little steep for us. And so now you're seeing our casinos really taking a hit. So I'm glad that the Senate has been on the brakes for like sports betting, other gambling measures too. But in this case, between a tribe and a local municipality, Grand Forks, I mean, I just don't see why there's a have and have nots in this case.
Senator Meyer, you mentioned at the outset that nothing's dead until sine die, and that certainly was the case last session. But with the court case on the OMB budget, the Christmas tree bill, you not being able to do that anymore, what does this look like to try to keep this concept alive? I mean, are you thinking about different vehicles at this point, or what's that process look like?
Yep, that's correct, Chad. We're looking at perhaps there's a gaming bill out there. Is there a tribal bill we could maybe attach some policy towards? So we are looking at those opportunities. Right now, looking more obviously on the House side to try to get maybe some momentum if we are able to do something. So we're in that work. Again, Scott, Nathan Davis, Chairman Azure, Mayor Bochensky, we've all been talking about what we can do next. And I will just say this again, from the very beginning, this partnership has been nothing but positive, very professional. I've enjoyed it from the very beginning. There's two communities mutually aligned that are looking to better their community. And just to add to something that Scott Davis had said earlier, Chairman Azure had referenced, in the committee that they have a 31,000 member tribe, and it's on the smallest footprint. So they have close to a 40% poverty level. So this is meant to help with social programs, infrastructure costs, and needs that they could pull off this casino, because this casino will hopefully have, well, what we've been seeing is 400,000 out of area visitors per year, mainly Canadian. And those are the ones that are bypassing not only Grand Forks and Fargo, they are heading to Sioux Falls in Minneapolis. So, but we are looking to go back to put a pin in that question. We are looking at some vehicles that may work on this, because I agree with the article that Corey Wenzel had written as well. This deserves another hearing. This deserves another shot. It was kind of got gross on the floor. And I think, like you said, we missed the policy discussion, and it just became an anti-gaming and I don't like this thing. And that's where we want to have a more productive conversation.
I agree with that. And by the way, you took my line. Put a pin in it. That's my line. Scott,
watch a lot of your podcasts.
Yeah, Scott M. How does this puzzle piece? Because again, we're talking about a lot of different gaming things, and I think sometimes people have been perceiving me as being anti-gambling, which I am not. I don't like to gamble personally, but I'm not against it. I don't have like a moral objection or anything to it. But I do wonder, because there's a lot of moving parts on this right now, and at some point, I feel like we have to have a conversation about how all these are going to fit together, because they don't feel like they're fitting together right now.
Right.
I am 100% in favor in creating the maximum number of opportunities for our friends on the tribal communities to flourish. 100% in favor of that. I want our charities to do well as also, but we've created these very specific silos for these things, and now they're in tension with one another. Is there a talk about maybe the state developing like a larger strategy for how we're going to approach gaming that it covers frontiers that we haven't opened yet, like sports betting?
No, that's a great point. Perhaps there should be some sort of we have commissions, but it may be a bigger discussion going forward. But I will say too, if you wanted to talk about all the players that may be impacted by this, I have watched, again, Chairman Azure and others from Turtle Mountain be willing to go and meet. The Spirit Lake Nation came out with opposition towards it. Next day, they were there meeting with them. They want to sit down and talk. What can we do to make sure this works for you? Same goes for the charities. Really, we want to make sure that you are held harmless. Let's be honest, there are 34 gaming sites in Grand Forks already that the city council determines, and the mayor determine if they want to expand that opportunity. So we're fine with them expanding gaming on that type of gaming, but not this type of gaming. That's where it comes from the state, in my opinion. So this is again, we're allowing our locals to make those calls if they want more gaming in their community. But this is where we're getting hung up on this. And I do appreciate the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa willing to meet, willing to go that extra mile, willing to make sure you're taken care of and you're not being hurt by this, because I tend to believe while there was a gaming lobbyist who came in and testified in opposition and said this could hurt him. You are right. It was a hypothetical, but I also hypothetically could say I think this could help, because when 400,000 people are coming from out of area, this is only a 225 room hotel. They're going to be going to our hotels. They're going to be going to our restaurants, our bars, hopefully shopping and tourism dollars. And I would hope that maybe if they are downtown Grand Forks, they may sit down at a table or play some machines as well.
Well, and we know charitable gaming's already hurt the tribes. And just one point, I am for guardrails. I think we need to create guardrails and a path for everybody to flourish so everybody can grow. Sorry, Chad.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Scott Davis the same question. I mean, what do you think about how we can pull the tribes, the charities, sports gaming, all these things and get everybody moving in the same direction?
Chad, that was another thing I harped on during session, 8 years ago. For weeks on end when this was going through, I kept saying, time out, guys, time out. Can we all just get together and share gaming across the board? Everybody could get something, piece of the pie. The charities, the e-tabs, the casinos, you got lottery, you got the lottery tickets, the bingo halls. We all could balance this out if we just sit down and talk and be fair. And again, nobody wanted to listen to Scott Davis, the Indian guy, about any of these ideas. Instead, they doubled down, pun intended, they doubled down on us. And that's hard because you send an army of gaming people, in particular, e-tab machine makers who have boatloads of money outside, and the manufacturers of the machines are outside of the state, by the way. I think people know that by now, who make millions upon billions. They send an army of lobbyists who are well-funded, deep-pocketed, and there you go. How can we compete about that? Scott Davis is just one lobbyist for a couple tribes versus Army. Yeah, it's hard to compete versus just time out. Can we sit down and we can share? We can balance this out because our population in North Dakota is not very much. So whenever you do these performas, these economic analysis of gaming with our state and in particular with cities, you see the numbers. You see it. I've seen them. And so sometimes people think, well, I'm going to build a casino in Bismarck or run it. Well, you ever run the numbers on that? You build it, they will come. That's not the case. That's not the case, So, but balancing this out between entities was I harped on that for half a session, and it just went nowhere. So here we are.
Well, the place where we've arrived at is, I think if you ask the average North Dakotan on the street, is gambling legal in North Dakota? They'd say no, and they would be wrong because clearly it is. It's just that we have it stratified across a lot of different things. And I love what I'm hearing. That's how I perceive the tribal efforts is you folks want to compete. We want an open marketplace, right? I mean, I think we should also, if we're going to allow gambling in the state of North Dakota, then it should be an open marketplace. And all the different participants should get in and offer their gaming or whatever it is that they're offering, to the public, and the public can decide what they want and don't want. One last quick question, and I don't know which of you is better. What about the other side of this? Obviously, gambling has a cost. I mean, we know there's a societal impact that's sometimes not great. Some people have problems with, as we're all talking about expanding this, there's a lot of good that comes from that, no question, but there's bad too. So last question, I don't know which one of you want to grab it, but how do we deal with the social impacts of this? Because they're real.
That's a great question, Rob. And also, I like you. I don't gamble very often. I've been known to put in a lot of these gaming bills, but it's more or less, hey, you're an adult, you don't need me. But there may be those that unfortunately have found themselves in the grips of addiction, and we have talked about what we need to do. Does it need to be a fraction or a percentage of what the gross revenues are? Is there another way? The good news is this project is likely to take maybe a couple of bienniums to get to that point. And we may have to figure out a funding mechanism. But again, that can all be figured out as well in that community host agreement. There's a lot that would be going on in that, but perhaps Scott Davis has a little better opinion on it too.
Yeah, so under our gaming compacts with the state, we are required to pay a portion of our revenue to Gambling Anonymous. And back in those days, I think it was Lutheran Services at the time that administered that process with a hotline number or some type of service for gamblers who are addicted. So that process is still in place. What's not in place again is ETABs and all the other charitable, those are, again, more prevalent, probably more people who possibly could be addicted to those machines. But what's the process for them to get some help on that? If they do become addicted to gambling.
That's
So we're doing our part.
Sure.
We're always doing our part. We're regulated, we're transparent. And I just don't see the other side doing the same as we are. So but yeah, I hope this CLC has some light here. And I just want to be, again, I want to be treated fair. That's my point. Making comments, doing the games. I've seen all the games. Believe me, I've seen them all. How to kill my bill. I've seen them and I know how they work. But be fair. And I told our leaders that we will work hard like any other lobbyists and tribal entity, whatever you want to call us. We work hard. Case in point, MHA, billions of dollars worth of oil and gas tax. We worked very hard on those bills that benefit everybody. So there's always room for negotiation. There's always room for compromise as we process. Let's just get to the table. Let's have a robust discussion. Sit down like adults and put away the comments and look at the numbers. Look at the facts.
And let's keep it focused on policy. What's good policy, what's bad policy, and we can all agree or disagree on that. But that's what it should be about. Scott, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Senator Meyer, good luck with, speaking of people sitting down at a table and getting along, good luck with that food fight down in appropriations over a truth and sentencing.
Are you sure you don't have a few more questions for me before I have to go back?
We're Senator Meyer's about to go talk about the sentencing bill that I've been writing so much about, and he's about to hear a hearing about that, which will be a lot of fun. I understand fighters are in their corner, so we'll see what happens.
I have my towel ready to throw in.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. You bet.
Take care.
Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
The work done by the thousands of North Dakota oil and natural gas workers is working to improve energy independence and national security. Working to make America more competitive around the world. And working to provide a better today and tomorrow for everyone in North Dakota and across our country. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas works for our future. North Dakota Petroleum Foundation, advancing the possibilities.
Welcome back. Fascinating discussion. And there's so many parts of that, because there's the specific question of the tribe, but it's just enabling language. And there's so many other levels that has to go through. The cities, have to be okay with it. It's a well-regulated process. And by the way, I thought Scott Davis's point about tribal gaming, the level to which because gambling can be a dirty industry. There's no question about that. I mean, historically, we look back, we know what it is. Tribal gaming is thoroughly regulated. And I'm not going to say no industry is perfect, but they are thoroughly regulated. That is the type of gaming that we want, that is scrutinized, that there's oversight. There's a portion there where we're recognizing the fact that there's societal impacts and they're contributing to that. That's the kind of gaming we want, really. And I do think at some point, we need a gambling master plan for North Dakota, and just decide, what are we going to allow? How are we going to allow it? And who's going to be allowed to do it? And how are we going to address the social impacts? We need something.
Yeah, and I think that the conversation about this actual bill and what it does got completely lost between Larsen's comments, which, I mean, again, she said them on the floor. Thank God Senator Roars stood up and she knocked him down right away.
One thing if she said it once, because I've used a word. I've used a word where in hindsight I looked at it and go, that was more pejorative than I intended.
Right.
If you use it off the cuff. But when you say the same thing over and over and over again, that's something else.
And that was going to be my point, when there's now these reports that she's been essentially using it in the hallways as well as a reason to defeat this thing. This isn't about the policy. This is about, do you like gambling or you don't like gambling? I agree with you. We are to a point now where gambling has gotten so big in the state, and we're like, oh, we don't have gambling in the state. You said if you ask the average person that they would say no. I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. I think that it's prevalent enough in so many establishments that between the lottery and charitable gambling that people would say, well, we don't have normal gambling, but we have, I mean, where I'm sitting right now, I think there's probably, within 5-block radius, I could probably go play blackjack at 1 o'clock this afternoon in 4 or 5 different places.
But that's my point is we never had like a watershed moment where we said gambling, yes or no. We had it kind of come in
Drip.
backdoor in a lot of different ways. And again, and the tribals is different. They're their own sovereign thing up there. They're allowed to make their law. They have decided gambling something that they want. It's very important to their economy, and that's great for them. So that's a jurisdictional thing. What they do up there, that's them. They're sovereign. Obviously, when they're coming off the reservation, then it becomes another question with the state of North Dakota. But yeah, we need to have a talk about this. And I don't want to slam the door on gambling. We need like one set of rules, and we need everybody to play by the rules.
Right. And I would just say another thing that frustrates me about Larsen's comment, and then we can move off of Larsen's comment, having just been in Bellecourt a month ago and seeing all the great stuff they have going on up there, seeing how hard Chairman Azure works for his folks up there at Turtle Mountain. It's just like it's a gut punch, right? To these folks that are doing the right things and working their tails off and moving the opportunities they're providing for kids on that reservation is something that we should emulate, not just on reservations, everywhere in the state. And so I just feel bad for them. They have to, and Scott Davis as well, that they have to deal with this crap when they're really just trying to do their jobs.
The democratic process is hard enough and confounding enough as it is. Democracy is, as we've said before, democracy is hard. It's hard for everybody. But then you add that other bigotry as another level of complexity, and it's unfair. And I just have zero patience for anything that makes any North Dakotan feel unwelcome here. Whether it's the indigenous people who are here before any of us, which makes it all the more absurd, or trans people or anybody, any of them.
Non-Christians. We're dealing with right now people who are not Christians are hearing a lot of stuff from up at the Capitol that might make them feel very, very unwelcome here.
I just have zero patience for it, and I have zero for distractions like that. The policy debate's a good one. I don't think you have to automatically approve of Turtle Mountain going there. I don't think there are valid policy arguments to make about that.
Which we haven't really heard because, it even sounds like the Grand Forks officials weren't given the time to, and I don't know that maybe the Grand Forks officials should have been more on the ball to be on there on the front end. But, again, I think if we believe in local control, we believe in property rights, these two communities have agreed to something here. Let's try to figure out why they both want this. And if there's no real big reason why not, let's make it work and let them start working that process that Senator Meyer talked about, which is not an easy one.
You just articulated what is for me, the definition of conservatism for me is if there's not a good reason why not, then we should allow it. And so I'm open to the idea that there may be good reasons why not. I haven't really heard a lot yet. But if our friends and neighbors at Turtle Mountain and in other instances, right? This one's specific to Turtle Mountain, but if we open the door to this, maybe Spirit Lake, maybe Standing Rock, these other communities as well, if there's opportunities where we can help them grow and survive and provide the public with a form of entertainment or service that they want, why not?
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, you do mention entertainment. Often these casinos, and what you see is, Lil Wayne or Little John, one of the Lils was just up at Bellecourt at the casino up there.
Not really my.
Well, but there was a Lil, somebody was up there.
Well, they have big acts coming through, and that, which is just about the only way. And again, nothing. I don't have any objection to casinos. The only way you're gonna find me in a casino is if there's a concert or something going on that I want to go see. Then I'll come. And so the thing is, these venues, they're not just, they're about gambling, obviously, but they bring in other acts too. They bring in other fun comedians and stuff that people want to see. It's a great amenity for the community. And again, I don't want to downplay the social impacts of gambling because they're very real and we have to be cognizant of them. But Americans are more accepting of gambling than they have been in the past.
Well, and I am probably more concerned today than I was even 5 years ago about those social ills. I mean, with sports gambling, I used to be all in. We should allow sports gambling, whatever. And now, I mean, you can sit at a baseball game and gamble on, what's going to happen the next inning, those kind of things. I don't like that. I think that's a bridge too far where you're starting to have people who, I want people to enjoy sports. If they want to gamble on the winner or loser of a game, that's fine. But when you start doing those prop things, then all of a sudden, like, it does become an addiction. It does become something that's more than just.
I think we need to have a master plan. What are we going to allow, and what are we not going to allow? Where are we going to allow it? How are we? All those. We don't have good answers. We've done this piecemeal, and it's time to get it. And our tribal friends need to be squarely in the middle of that debate, squarely in the middle of it, because we need to do what's best for them as well.
And hopefully not a debate. Hopefully it's a conversation.
Conversation, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, debate. I use debate, not, a conversation can be a debate. It's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. So changing gears a little bit, I really enjoyed your column about the West Fargo public schools. It's something that we talked about on Wednesday night on the podcast, and like the connecting the dots between the stupid stuff the legislature does on culture issues and property taxes is something that's really.
I was basically
Yeah.
writing about the point you made on the podcast.
Yeah, it's $8 million that this little anti-trans bill. And I think Zach Ista said it right on Wednesday night when he said, if you're fighting against trans people, you've won. You've won. Now let it go. Let kids wash their damn hands.
What they're saying, you can't even wash your hands. That's not about privacy. That's not about safety. That's about something else. And by the way, West Fargo's not the only school.
Of course not.
After I wrote that, I heard from people in 3 or 4 different schools at least, saying we got the same thing. How many millions of dollars would we have to spend to go back and refurbish all those schools? And the other thing that they're objecting of, but we can't have unisex bathrooms, right? Well, the thing that they're objecting of is basically creating bathrooms where every stall is like its own little room. And frankly, maybe that's the future. I kind of like that.
That's my ideal place to go to a bathroom. I got one of those at my house,
Right. I like the idea of having a much more private. I really don't like the flimsy. I'm not scared of like trans people or anything.
Right.
When I get in there. I just don't feel very private when I'm in there. And you got these like sheet metal doors, and there's like a 2-inch gap, so everybody walking by can look in at what you're doing. It doesn't feel very private to me. So I'm looking at unisex bathrooms. Like, great, we're going to kill a lot of birds with one stone here. It's more private and comfortable for me. It's more private and comfortable for trans people. We get rid of the gender issues. But that's the problem is, if we build bathrooms like that, trans people might not get the message that they're not welcome in our state.
It's an expensive message, an expensive, unnecessary message. I want trans people. I want all people in North Dakota. We need workers.
I don't care, Rick. I don't care.
I don't care either.
And again, I have zero patience for anything that makes North Dakotans or people who might aspire to be North Dakotans make them feel not welcome here. Being a North Dakota is a pretty great thing to be. I love being from North Dakota. I love this state. I love this country, and I hate things that make people feel unwelcome. I hate it. It's disgusting, and that's all the bathroom thing really is. It's about making a specific group of people feel unwelcome.
And again, schools having to respond to these things in really, really big ways. I hope that the Senate obviously kills this thing because it's ridiculous. Where do you wash your hands? But if they do pass it, the governor signs it. I think the governor would veto it with this kind of thing. But then the schools have to come up with $8 million to pay for this thing from property taxes.
It's $8 million for one school district.
Right.
So, I mean, it's going to be more. But also remember, it's not just about those hand washing areas. Like, they want to ban even unisex bathrooms. So then that's too far. So now we're back to how many millions of dollars are we going to spend on trying to police these bathrooms and making sure that when you could just build the unisex bathrooms and be done with it. You could just be done with it.
Or just how about we just let people go to the bathroom and let local officials figure out how to handle bathrooms?
For that.
What
Yeah.
a concept.
And again, I have, and just to put a period at the end of the sentence, there has still never been a problem with this in the state of North Dakota. Like not, I realize like there's, somebody got assaulted or groped or something in a bat, and I get it. Those things can happen. I think it's disgusting to blame that on like people being trans. I think that's just on, there's gross individuals of all ethnicities and backgrounds and everything else. So there's never been a problem. This is all of this folderol that we are spending on is a solution in search of a problem.
I would imagine there's a hell of a lot more women and girls that have been assaulted in bathrooms by men than there have been by any transgender people.
By the way, somebody who is bent on doing something criminal in a bathroom is not going to give a rip about what the policy is about what side of the bathroom they can be on. They don't care. If they're going to go in there and assault somebody, they don't care.
Yeah. It's kind of like you saying the other day that nobody's thinking about their 15 days in prison as they're, in a high-speed chase with a police officer. Nobody's thinking about that.
Right. Well, I always made that same argument about like gun-free zones, right? Like the person who's going to shoot a place up doesn't care about your gun-free zone.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to visit about, and we're talking about the price of things. You and I are both on the same page when it comes to meals being provided to students. And yesterday, the House Appropriations Committee gave the only meal bill that's left, an 8 to 14 do not pass. I will tell you, I thought the conversation was silly. Like legislators saying, well, I see kids at the C-store all the time eating lunch, so why should we provide them lunch? We wouldn't be buying them lunch at the C-store. And so I'm disappointed.
By the way, if they are eating lunch at the C-store, we wouldn't be buying them anything.
Right, exactly. But I'm disappointed that they just went straight up. They voted it down. And rather than looking at going to 300%, or maybe it's just lunch for elementary school kids or something like that, I think this is one of those issues that now the legislature has had several sessions to do something. This is ripe for initiated measure. And I know you don't like initiated measures, but man, how many times do you let the legislature vote against this?
I've talked about this in the past. One of the ways I wouldn't mind an initiated measure if it worked sort of like a referendum, where you could take a bill that failed at the legislature
and then bring it to the people,
and refer it to the ballot. I like that. Because then at least it goes through the scrutiny. The drafting's going to be better. I like that. And maybe you don't even have, I guess you would still maybe have to collect signatures, but I wouldn't mind that kind of an measure. And then fall into that category.
Right. But again, I think that in a time where we're trying to get money back in the pockets of working families and that type of thing, the conversation was just, it was not, the conversations leading up to crossover and leading up to the end of the session are always bad because people are tired. The Appropriations Committee's been working 12 hours a day, but I thought last night's conversation was particularly disappointing.
Well, what disappointed me is there seemed to be an unwillingness, and I guess you kind of referred to it, but an unwillingness to even try to reach a compromise.
Right.
Bill, like okay, if cost is your issue, and that's not an unfair objection.
Right.
If that's your issue, then let's talk about ways we can narrow it. Let's talk about means testing. Let's talk about, and I wish we wouldn't have the means test. I feel like I guess if that's the price
but
tag,
that's how we've done it, right? That's how the Fed said it. I mean,
I feel like a lot of the benefit of just being done with that and just providing it for everybody. I don't understand, like it turns into a class where, well, some rich person's kids might get meal. Who cares? Right.
Well, and that's why I kind of like the idea of
I'm on the roads. I mean,
right. But that's why I kind of like the idea of just let's do all elementary then, to start out with, or something like that.
And let's narrow it. Like I think breakfasts were included. Okay, let's not do breakfast. Let's just do lunch.
Yeah.
At least it's something. At least we're getting there, and then we can see what that costs us, and if we want to add more down the road, we can. I'm not against iterating. But there was just a complete unwillingness to do anything with it. And that felt really unfair to this issue that, by the way, multiple polls have showed that a landslide level of the electorate wants it.
Yeah.
It deserved more than what it got of that committee.
I also thought the one of the arguments that people were made is that, it was increased to 200% of poverty last year. All the money was not used, so therefore it must not be a need. again, so you have fiscal notes that take worst case scenario or best case scenario that you've got 100% usage plus an uptick in people eating lunch. And then you end up not using all that money. Then they use the fiscal note to say, oh, look, people didn't want this program. They didn't use all of it. Again, and I thought John Nelson, who was against universal, but said, maybe we go to 200%, 250% of poverty and use the same pot of money that we had last session, and that should cover more kids. So there's conversation, but there wasn't any movement towards doing something.
Well, the thing is, I don't know what they're so scared of. Like, if people don't use it, then we won't spend the money. What are you afraid of? I think some of them, they're afraid of giving people that they don't like a win. I think that's where some of it boils down to. Like, I don't like those people. They bother me, and I don't want them to win on issues. And it doesn't really matter about making I don't want to say that's true for all of them. It's true for some of them.
Especially, again, I will say at crossover and leading up to the end of the session, that might play a role. Before we move on to viewers' comments, I got one other thing, Rob, that I want to ask you about. The book ban conversation last night on the floor.
Filed a column about it this morning.
So, I mean, why don't we tell people how that went and your thoughts on it? I've got some thoughts too.
Yeah. So it's a Senate bill, and I wasn't
2307.
2307. I just pulled my draft up because I wanted to read some of this quotes. So Senator Boehm, who's the sponsor of this bill, and he sponsored similar legislation last time around, which did pass both chambers. It was kept out of the law by Governor Burgum vetoing it. He said essentially, and the thing is, I think in a better sort of world, this is the lead line of my column. In a legislature that had better priorities than this one does, Senator Boehm would be censured for what he said on the floor of the Senate. And this is what he said. He goes, to fight this battle against the pornographers, pedophiles, and groomers, we must cover this issue comprehensively in all these areas. The chamber was presented with information on whether this explicit material is in our libraries and schools. If you get a second look at that list, not every library in the state has this material, but there is enough to support this legislation. This man is calling a broad swath of public servants, librarians, educators, school officials, calling them pornographers, pedophiles, and groomers. And it's just, first of all, what we're talking about is not pornography. It is material that talks about sex education. It's material that talks about the LGBTQ community, that offends the sensitive sensibilities of Senator Boehm. It is not pornography. It is not grooming. It's just not. And by the way, I want to give some credit to Senator Sean Cleary.
That's what I was just going to talk about.
Who stood up at the end, and I have his quote here. He said, this bill is not an attack on librarians, libraries, or schools. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That's what Senator Boehm said. He defending it. What Senator Cleary said is, this bill adds an entirely new process at the end of that, asking states attorneys and law enforcement to be the final arbiter over books in the kids section. States attorneys prosecute crimes. They don't manage book collections. And then he also said, we should trust parents, school boards, and city commissions to make the best decisions for their communities. And for the record, librarians, teachers, they're not pedophiles, they're not pornographers, and they're not groomers, which...
Amen, Senator Clear. I sent him a text right away this morning and told him I was proud of my senator. I'm glad he's my senator because that last line was so damn important. And every senator in that chamber should have stood up and said the same thing, because I will tell you, from my job, teachers and librarians are hearing this stuff and they're feeling, speaking of people who aren't feeling welcome, they're not feeling welcome to do their jobs, who just go to work every day and try to do right by our kids. And then you have people like Senator Boehm who are calling them names. Thank God for senators like Sean Cleary who stands up for them and puts some words behind it.
Listen, I get some of this stuff is subjective. There are some kids' books out there that I don't like very much because I feel like they're very political. But the thing is I'm not like starting a campaign to take those books out of the library. My kids just aren't gonna read those books.
If you want to start a campaign, you talk to your local librarian to get it removed.
If it was like a very extreme situation, then sure.
Yeah.
for me personally, it would have to be pretty extreme for me to
Right.
get up. But sure. I mean, if I did, I would talk to my librarian. Maybe there's some things we could do. I wouldn't, and this is what Senator Bain's bill does. It involves the criminal justice system, state's attorneys, who, by the way, are already damn busy trying to deal with drug overdoses and all the other things that they have to deal with. So now you're going to loop the cops and the state's attorneys in to where they have to curate libraries now, because that's what's going to happen. Senator Bain says, "Oh well, they're just at the very end of this thing." You don't think that some of the wild-eyed, censorious, modern-day Savonarola's who their tea kettle's been tipped over by some of these books, you don't think they're going to push it all the way to the extreme? Like, they're already calling people pedophiles and groomers and everything. You think they're not going to appeal that all the way to the law enforcement end? Of course they are. And of course, this is going to end up on the desks of our state's attorneys who, damn it, have better things to do.
At a time when we're hearing over and over and over again about violent crime being up and all these different things that we have to deal with, you're going to send our state's attorneys into the libraries to manage their book collection. So hopefully the House does something about this and defeats it on the backside, because Sean Cleary was right and 20 senators were right yesterday when they voted no on this thing.
27-20. It needed 24, which, by the way, was closer than I expected.
Me too.
So, I mean, silver lining, I guess, but it still passed. But if Governor Armstrong were to veto it, indication maybe they wouldn't have the numbers to get past the veto, but who knows? We're a long way from that. I hope the House kills it. All right. We got some listener feedback from text messages, which, by the way, once we get, and Matt, helpfully, when he printed out the comments this time, put the phone number, because I'm an idiot and I always forget the phone number. So I can tell you guys the phone number if you want to leave us a voicemail or leave us a text message with some feedback. 701-587-3141. Save that into your phone. And so while you're listening, if you hear something and you want to shoot a quick response or something, you can just shoot a text, 701-587-3141, or you can call it and leave a voicemail. I know people are a little shy about that, but we had one person do it. That was fun. We got a couple.
Ashley from Jamestown, if I remember correctly.
From Jamestown, that's right. One of our most famous listeners. Let's see. Josh in Bismarck says, "Nice job, Rob and Chad, on the podcast." And yes, some of us do listen for the whole show, especially for the closing Easter eggs. And I was actually sharing some data with you this week, Chad. Looking at it's hard because the different platforms that the podcast is on, not all of them collect the same data. Spotify does. Spotify is a pretty big portion of our audience. And the nice thing is, we joke about how many people are still listening at the end. We usually have about 70% of the audience still listening at the end.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, especially in the last episode where I think it was 4.5 hours. No, last Friday's episode was like 90. It felt like it was a lot longer, and I think that's the one. Yep, that's the one that Josh was referencing to, that some of us do listen to the whole show. And I got to be honest, I often skip the Easter eggs. And then I heard the one on Wednesday night after the live show where my wife was reprimanding me for being wrong so often. So I'm going to start listening because Matt's putting some good stuff in there at the end.
Easter eggs are funny. The Easter eggs are funny. I've done a few of them back, but Matt's taken over all the editing of the show because, frankly, he's better at it than I am. And he picks out some great Easter eggs. So listen to the end. All right. Another text. Mike in Harvey, North Dakota. Beautiful Harvey, North Dakota. Home of the Harvey Hornets.
Look at you. Showing your Class B cred.
That's right. I like Harvey. Harvey's a cool town. All right. He says, "I believe the biggest problem is the amount of bills that are submitted and the time it takes to spend on them." I think he means that the time spent on them, which most are not pertinent to most North Dakotans. I would like to see a legislator post $1,000 when they propose a new bill. If it makes it through and becomes law, they get $1,500. Paying them the extra $500 would come out of the fund of all the $1,000 proposals that fail. I believe they would work on bills that are needed. I like where Mike's heart is at.
Yeah, I think I like he's thinking outside the box, but I mean, Mike, with all due respect, this is a terrible idea because people like, I don't know, Democrats wouldn't be able to ever sponsor a bill because they would lose money every time they sponsored a bill.
Also, if they're getting $1,500 for every bill that passes, they're not failing that many bills.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll be paying each other off for votes in the back. Also, you'd have a bunch of bills that are dumb but easy to pass. Cleanup bills. I'm gonna make me some money. I'm gonna put in this cleanup
Yeah,
bill.
I'm gonna rearrange some commas in the code and make me $1,500. Mike, I kind of think his tongue was in his cheek. And the thing is, that Mike's identifying a real problem.
Absolutely.
Clearly frustrated, and as are we. And I completely understand. I don't think this is the way. But I was interested. Senator Hogue during our live show made a kind of offhand comment when we were talking about committees killing bills, and he said he had some idea because there was a bill that would allow the majority and minority leaders of their caucuses to kind of to see what bills have been filed with legislative councils to maybe act as a clearinghouse to try to consolidate some of them. That bill's failed. But he said he had some other ideas. I'm kind of curious what those ideas would be, because this is a problem. We were just talking about the school meals bill, and at this time in the session where everybody's crunching before crossover, or at the end when everybody's crunching, people get tired. These bills, I think, sometimes don't get the attention and the committee work that they deserve. And I think part of addressing that problem would be fewer bills.
Yeah, and I think it's worse on a crossover than it is even at the end of the session because, before crossover, it's all the bills that are left. The second half, the Senate's going to have to deal with all the stuff coming over from the House. But I think both chambers have killed a lot of stuff this session. I think it feels like more than normal. So hopefully we'll have a more focused second half. But I feel like this week and next week leading up to that Wednesday crossover, there might be some less than perfect legislating going on.
Yeah. And that usually happens. And let's, at the end of the day, these are human beings. They only have so much stamina, like any of us. I mean, you tell me that you're doing your best work on hour 12 of a day.
No.
Just
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I'm sympathetic to that.
especially it's hour 12 of looking through really, really dense they're looking at agency budgets. This isn't like super, it's important, but it's not the most exciting stuff in the world. And to do that in those committee rooms for hour after hour after hour, man, I would be so crabby at the end. I'd be yelling at everybody in that room.
I couldn't imagine sitting through that and then going on the House floor, or the Senate floor, I guess, in this case, and listening to somebody like Senator Boehm call our educators and librarians, who are heroes in a lot of ways. I mean, I think of a library. I shared it when I wrote about this. I shared a story, after the flood here in Minot, where my daughter, Eric Ramstead Middle School, was destroyed. And so, a lot of the kids, they had to go to school in the Civic Center, the auditorium in Minot, which is right next to the library. And I mean, it was tough. That facility was not designed to be a school. I mean, I don't blame it. It's something we had to do because they had to go to school somewhere, and that's what was available. But it was tough. Pickups were hard and everything. And there were a ton of kids who spent a lot of time at that library. And those librarians did such a fantastic job of finding activities for those kids, finding ways, to occupy them and to help out with what just wasn't an optimal situation for anybody. Just above and beyond. I mean, not a part of their job description at all. To hear them called groomers and pedophiles makes me want to curse. And if I had to sit on the Senate floor and listen to that after a long day in appropriations or something, I'd want to throw something, which would not be appropriate and not excusable. And I'm not condoning it, but God almighty.
Yeah, and I think you saw Senator Clary. He's a laid back guy. I think that's the most worked up I've ever seen him. So he was at about a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10 when he laid that stuff out. But you could see in his face. I mean, he was exhausted and he didn't like that. But I will point out one other thing. I mean, last night in House Appropriations, Representative Keith Kempenick, they were talking about one of the ESA bills. And again, we can debate ESA bills being good and bad. His rationale for why this was necessary is because public schools are terrible. They're failing. They're only teaching DEI and not teaching writing and arithmetic anymore.
Not true.
It's not true, and it's offensive to people who are going to work every day, and it doesn't help the debate at all. And so,
public schools were failing. Sure. Let's talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, they're not. I'm a product of our public schools. I have kids at public schools. I can't speak for every school in the state. Mine not. We seem to be doing okay. I understand there's always room for improvement, but come on.
Of course. But those are the things that people are listening to, right? I mean, and so I wish people would just think a little bit before they talk, and not just take whatever you saw in the most recent Facebook post and consider it gospel. It's infuriating.
Okay, we're gonna end the show there. We're gonna put a pin in it. Thank you so much for everybody who turned up for our live show. I want to reiterate one more time. That was one of the most fun moments I've had in my career doing this. That was just a lot of fun. It was great to see a lot of people who showed up. I've continued to get texts. There were more people even there than I realized, because we had the group and they were kind of sitting, but there were more people scattered around the restaurant listening. I guess there were people on the other side that were listening.
Really?
I got some text messages from them. So I'm not saying we had a huge, we had 30, 40 people there, I think, total.
Yep.
But it was really great. It was a lot of fun. Our plan is to do more down the road. We're working on it. People are wanting to bring it to other cities. Matt, I think, was talking maybe we want to try another one before the end of the legislative session. I don't know. That would be fun in Bismarck again, but I want to get out to like Fargo, Grand Forks, Minot, out west, Williston, Dickinson. I mean,
Whoa.
I know. I'm getting
Goodness.
crazy. I had so much fun. I'm so enthusiastic about it. But it was really great. I just want a sincere thank you for everybody who listens, who emails. I've been doing this for a long time, so I've got my audience, and I always love going back and forth with people, but it's just, in a lot of ways, this is new. I mean, I built the blog and I built my writing career, and this, the podcast, I've tried in fits and starts over the years, but this is the first time I really feel like we're building something here that's pretty great and can be a pretty important part of the conversation in North Dakota.
Yeah, and Sue and I had a blast on Wednesday night, an absolute blast. It was fun. It was fun to be in front of people we knew. Your wife is fantastic, by the way, Rob.
She's great.
I was surprised knowing you that she was as great as she is.
Fair.
But no, it's super fun. I look forward to doing it again. And I want to give you a shout out for your Goonies shirt before we leave the air. That is good stuff. And you informed me that there's a Goonies 2 coming out. I cannot wait.
Yeah, well, it's in plan. Corey Feldman was confirmed that they're recasting. So I don't know if like
Corey Feldman will forget by tomorrow that he even said it was happening.
Maybe, but supposedly Steven Spielberg is in. They have Chris Columbus, who wrote the original script, I think is on as a producer.
So not the Christopher Columbus.
Chris Columbus of a like Home Alone fame and all
but not the the guy who claims to have discovered America, a different Christopher Columbus.
Right. I think people understand that the explorer who died centuries ago is not involved in a remake of.
Listen, I keep hearing our public schools are failing, so hard to say if people know that or not.
All right, fair enough. People are. Yeah, I don't know.
People aren't listening anymore.
People aren't listening anymore. We're going to put a pin in it there. We're actually going to stop now. Thank you so much for listening. And once again, if you want to leave voicemail, send us a text, 701-587-3141. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.
That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Hoeven, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
Good luck with that food fight down in appropriations over a freaking cent thing.
Are you sure you don't have a few more questions for me before I have to go back?